All right, you are not going to believe this story. Seriously, it's one of the most incredible rags to riches tales you'll ever hear. It's all about a young, broke immigrant who looked at the world just a little bit differently and built an entire empire from something everyone else was literally throwing in the trash. This is the story of Sam Zamarai, the original Banana Man.
And I mean that literally, no exaggeration. His whole journey kicks off with that simple, powerful idea. One man's trash is another man's treasure. But this wasn't just some small-time hustle. This was the seed for a billion-dollar empire that would, believe it or not, go on to shape the fate of nations. So you gotta ask yourself, how does a journey like that even get started? Well, it all begins with a totally unique perspective, one that was forged in hardship. It's what allowed a young guy to see a golden opportunity where the established giants of the industry only saw garbage. Sam's life didn't start out easy, not by a long shot. He was born into a poor farming family back in Russia, and then tragedy strikes. His father dies, leaving the family with basically nothing. So get this, at just 14 years old, he makes the unbelievable choice to cross the ocean to America, all by himself. Can you even imagine that kind of grit?
So after a few years of bouncing around doing odd jobs, a 16-year-old Sam finds himself at the port of Mobile, Alabama. And I want you to picture this. It's loud, it's busy, people are yelling, cargo's flying around, total chaos, right? Well, not to Sam. He's just watching. And while everyone else sees a mess, he sees a machine. A finely tuned system run by the biggest company in the game, the United Fruit Company. And more importantly, he spotted a glitch in their system.
United Fruit had this whole process down to a science. First, you had the greens, the perfect, unripe bananas that were worth the most money. Then came the yellows, which were getting ripe and sold cheap locally. And then you had the spotted bananas. These were perfectly edible, probably the best tasting ones, but they were ripening too fast to ship. So what did this huge company do? They just tossed them. We're talking about 15% of every single shipment just thrown away. And for Sam, boom, that wasn't trash. That was opportunity knocking loudly.
It's one thing to see an opportunity. We all do that. But to actually act on it, to put your money where your mouth is, especially when you have almost nothing to your name, that's a whole different ballgame. And this is that moment for Sam.
$50. That's it. That's all he had. And let's be clear, this wasn't just some spare cash he had lying around. This was his entire life savings. Every single penny he had managed to scrape together since landing in America. And he was about to bet the whole thing on a pile of spotted bananas.
So he marches right up to the United Fruit agents, this 16-year-old kid who barely speaks English, and he makes them an offer that must have sounded absolutely insane. He tells them, "I'll buy your garbage." You could just imagine them looking at each other, probably shrugging and thinking, is this kid for real? For them, it was free money for trash. But for Sam, this was his shot.
Okay, so the plan sounds pretty brilliant in theory, right? Buy low, sell fast. Simple. But there was a massive problem he didn't see coming. A huge ticking clock was attached to his entire plan, and it was about to create a logistical nightmare.
Sam gets his bananas and loads them onto a train, planning to sell them in the towns down the line. Except there's one tiny detail he hadn't thought about. The train was painfully slow. It would just stop for hours at a time waiting for another train to pass or for new cargo, and with every single minute that ticked by, his beautiful yellow bananas were turning brown and mushy.
Really, what do you do in that situation? Your entire investment, your whole future, is literally rotting away right in front of your eyes. He knew if he waited until he got to his destination, he'd have nothing left to sell. He was staring total ruin right in the face.
But right there, in that moment of pure desperation, he has this incredible aha moment. It's a complete game changer. He just flips the whole problem on its head. He thinks, okay, if I can't get my bananas to the market in time, I'm going to bring the market to my bananas. And just like that, the telegraph strategy was born.
And his strategy was pure genius. Here's what he did. Every single time the train made one of its long stops, he would leap off, sprint to the nearest Western Union office, and wire a message ahead to the merchants in the next town. The message was simple. I've got cheap bananas on the way. Be at the station. You get a commission on everything you sell. So by the time his slow train finally chugged into the station, bam! A crowd of buyers was already there on the platform, waiting for him with cash in hand.
1 week. That's all it took. By the end of that very first trip, he had sold every last banana. That $50 he started with, it was now $190. But honestly, the money wasn't even the most important part. The big takeaway was this: his crazy, counterintuitive idea actually worked. He'd found a crack in the system.
Well, when a little fish starts making big waves, it's only a matter of time before the shark notices. Sam's hustle started small, but it got so big, so fast, that the giant of the industry, United Fruit, started seeing him as less of a curiosity and more of a genuine threat.
And he didn't just do it once. He did it again and again and again, getting more efficient each time. He basically created a whole new system for buying and selling the rejects. And pretty soon, all these low-cost bananas started flooding the market and actually hurting United Fruit's premium sales. Before they knew it, the little hustler buying their scraps had become the single biggest buyer at the entire port.
And this is where you get that classic David versus Goliath showdown, right? On one side, you have Sam, fast, agile, turning massive risks into huge rewards. And on the other, you've got United Fruit, this slow, corporate behemoth just trying to protect its turf. They were playing two completely different games.
And, well, Goliath did not like David messing with the status quo. So they started to fight back, and they fought dirty. They'd intentionally delay his shipments, they'd suddenly cut his supply off, sometimes they'd even dump thousands of their own bananas onto the market at rock-bottom prices just to tank his profit margins and try to drive him out of business.
Sam knew this was a fight for survival. He realized that as long as United Fruit controlled the supply of bananas, he was always going to be under their thumb. So he makes the riskiest, boldest decision of his life. Fine. If you won't sell to me, I'll just grow my own.
He managed to find an investor, he bought a small fleet of steamships, and he went all in. He moved his entire operation from the ports of Alabama straight to the source, the jungles of Central America. And he wasn't some suit sitting in an air-conditioned office. He was in the jungle, getting his hands dirty, clearing land, and planting crops right alongside his workers.
But Sam's ambition was just on another level. He saw the potential to expand even more, to buy up all this cheap, fertile land before United Fruit could get to it. The problem? He was already deep in debt, and his partner got cold feet. He said, no more risk. Well, for Sam, that was a deal breaker. He knew right then and there that he needed to be fully in charge.
So he goes to his partner, makes him an offer he can't refuse, and buys him out. Completely. Boom. Just like that, Sam Zimmerman now owns 90% of the entire company. He's the king of his own jungle. But the real question is, where on earth did he get the money to pull that off?
And this is where the story goes from risky to just plain insane. No bank on earth would lend him more money. So he turned to the underworld. He secured a loan with a 50% interest rate. 50! Think about that. That's not a business move. That's a bet the company all-or-nothing gamble. If it pays off, he's a legend. If it doesn't, he is completely and totally finished.
And all this really makes you wonder, right? At what point does a business stop being just a business and become something more like war? I mean, Sam's journey started with him just trying to sell some rejected fruit. But to survive and to grow, he was forced into a much bigger, much more dangerous game. One that wasn't just about competing with another company anymore, but was about to involve taking on entire governments,